You haven't budged for 4 weeks already, just sitting here. It's time to shoot a video.
Man, these darn time travels. I come out, then I go upstairs, and I absolutely had to play doctor for a little bit, you know?
Oh, this is really...
So I took it with me, just in case I need to fix something. Oh man, hello gentlemen, my name is Dmitry, welcome to the channel. While I was away for a bit on some business, the guys decided to do a little modification to the car bath, and that's what this video is going to be about. I hope you'll enjoy it. This is just a small job. We decided to upgrade our car bath, since after all, it's a funny car, so to speak, and it should do something out of the ordinary. 5 kilowatts of nominal power just isn't enough, so we decided to put in a Gold Motors engine with 10 kilowatts of nominal power, the same one that's installed on this kid's buggy right here. Also, since our previous controller burned out, we're going to install a Kelly controller rated for 700 amps, and the engine is liquid cooled. We decided to try a phase change cooling system using so-called dry water from the company 3. Well, let's see how that turns out.
We decided to upgrade our car bath. You might have seen it in the first video on the channel, specifically to double its power, so to speak. Previously it had a Chinese motor rated at 5 kilowatts nominal. Now we've installed a 10 kilowatt nominal motor with liquid cooling. Its peak current, according to the manufacturer, is 500 amps. But when it comes to Chinese manufacturers and their peak current ratings, that's a whole separate topic, because the controller also says it's rated for 700 amps, but the fuse is set at 300. So what did we actually change here? The gearbox is the same as before, with some margin. We had to machine the motor shaft, which we did without disassembling the motor, and also re-drill the mounting holes. Since the brake caliper was in the way, we had to shift the entire motor to the right, so now the gear sits as it did originally on the cart, between two bearings. As for the electrical system, the battery is the same as before, in a titanium case, with flat lithium NMC cells rated at 65 amp hours. The peak current is about 300 amps, and it's a 20S1P configuration. Of course, we have a contactor installed, actually 2 paired contactors, one for reverse current. In practice, a contactor is essential, because sometimes when a controller burns out, it doesn't fail completely. It still draws some current. But that current isn't enough to blow the fuse or trigger the BMS to shut down due to a short circuit. So current keeps flowing and the controller continues to burn. If you don't have a contactor in such a system, what do? Cut the wires? Try to connect to the BMS via phone? No. With contactors, it's very convenient. The ignition switch controls the contactors positive, and at any moment, we can disconnect the whole system. Here's the battery, and as for the BMS, we have a very interesting setup. The contactor's negative is controlled by the BMS's power output. The BMS itself is small, like this, rated for 30 amps, and charging also goes through the BMS. What does this give us? Since the currents here are high, peak could really be 400 amps. BMS units rated for such currents are very expensive. For example, we have one rated for 400 amps, which costs about 25,000 rubles. That's a lot. And even if they actually met their specs, that would be great, but in practice, BMS units labeled for 200 amps burn out at a constant 100 amps, not peak but continuous, so it's unclear what rating you really need. If our nominal current is 300 amps, do we need a BMS rated for 1000 amps? It's not clear. They work fine, you can connect to them, they show battery state as well, but unfortunately, they don't hold up to their specs and are very expensive. So what does our setup give us? The BMS still monitors all battery parameters, and we can connect to it via Bluetooth. If there's an over-discharge, overcharge, or cell over temperature, the contactor will always open. Charging also goes through the BMS, so it fully controls charging. The only thing it doesn't control is overcurrent, but that's limited by the controller. If the current is exceeded, it throws an error. There's also a fuse, and we have a contactor controlled by the ignition switch, so in theory, nothing can go wrong. The convenience is that this small BMS isn't a huge, heavy, expensive thing with massive wires. It's compact, not too expensive, and provides all the same functions: temperature, battery monitoring, etc. It fits nicely here, handles charging, and controls the contactor. As I mentioned, the controller is, I think, a Kelly brand, rated for 700 amps peak. Probably the most interesting part of our whole system is the cooling. Here it will be thermosiphon based with a phase change. Sounds complicated, but let me explain how it works. The motor, as I said, is liquid cooled. There's a radiator, some kind of oil cooler, seems decent, mounted above the motor at a slight angle. In this part, we'll fill it with Freon, which has a relatively low boiling point, around 23 degrees Celsius, or you could use one with an 11-degree boiling point. It's simply connected by tubes. The motor will heat up, the Freon will boil, and since vapor is less dense, it will rise up the tube to the radiator, condense there, and flow back down the other tube into the motor. Of course, we have a sight glass so that in case of depressurization, we can always check if there's Freon in the system, and a Schrader valve to vacuum and fill the system. So, what are the theoretical advantages of such a system? First, we don't need any pump. Chinese pumps aren't very reliable anyway. In theory, this system can work like a thermostat. The motor won't be cooled until it reaches the boiling point of the working fluid, i.e., Freon. For example, if we use Freon with a boiling point of 23 degrees, the motor will only start cooling when two conditions are met. The motor temperature is above 23 degrees and it's higher than the ambient temperature. Then the motor will be cooled. If we had a regular liquid cooling system without a thermostat, and for example we wanted to drive in winter at minus 20 degrees, the coolant would constantly circulate and the motor temperature would stay around minus 15, which I think isn't very good for it. In this setup, again, in theory, it should first warm up to the boiling point of the refrigerant before it starts cooling. How will this system work? How effective will it be? It's not completely clear yet, but we'll give it a try. Another possible advantage of this system is that the specific heat of vaporization of a substance is always much higher than its heat capacity. Thus, during the phase transition, in theory, we can make all the pipelines significantly smaller in cross-section, there will be less coolant volume, and in theory, greater heat transfer. We'll give it a try. Well, we've almost assembled it already. The only thing left is that we haven't filled the cooling system yet, and we can try out how it actually runs. Well, it's pretty fast. And once more. So at this point, we fine-tuned the controller a bit because the motor wasn't reaching its maximum RPM since the controller was reading the motor speed incorrectly. We also tweaked the accelerator pedal a bit. It was way too sensitive. We need to set it up so that in the first 50% of pedal travel, you only get about 20 to 30% of the power. And now actually the final stage. We're filling up our cooling system. First, we vacuum it out with a vacuum pump, and then we'll fill it with so-called dry water, specifically VEK649. Its boiling point is around 49 degrees Celsius. The advantage is that, unlike R11 Freon, it doesn't corrode anything. Not rubber, not gaskets. But R11 does corrode things after all. It's also completely inert and acts as a dielectric. Basically, it's used for extinguishing electronics fires. Its boiling point, of course, is a bit higher, 49 degrees. But in principle, that's enough because, well, there's no point in filling with R11 at 23 degrees, since sometimes our ambient temperature is higher. For example, in summer, it can reach 32 degrees. And that would mean constantly elevated pressure in the system even when it's idle. That's not really an advantage, but with the third liquid, the pressure will always be close to atmospheric. Only when the engine really heats up will the cooling system kick in. Well, basically, as I've already mentioned and explained, after the initial vacuuming process, a small amount of liquid inevitably passed through the connecting hose. And after we have fully and completely vacuumed the entire system, we then carefully close off the vacuum line from the main pump, subsequently open the liquid pump valve, and diligently watch through the transparent sight glass to precisely determine how much liquid we actually need to fill into the system. So we've completely filled our cooling system up to the sight glass. Unfortunately, we won't be able to test it right now, because it's extremely cold outside. The engine is very massive. It has a large contact area with the aluminum bracket and the reducer, and the bracket itself is in close contact with the frame. So it's just not possible to heat this whole system above 50 degrees in winter. We'll see in the summer, but I think everything here is so massive that it will be very difficult to heat it up at all. But in the summer, we'll watch how the radiator heats up. For now, let's see what we can do in winter. But in winter there's very little traction here. The power is excessive, so the tests won't be very objective. But in the summer on asphalt, that's when it will get interesting.
Well, gentlemen, let's get started testing this little miracle beast. I've added a lot of power, so let's see what it's capable of. But honestly, I'm already scared. This thing turned out absolutely insane. I hope I don't kill myself. All right, reverse. It's a bit twitchy. Damn! Basically, it would be awesome on asphalt, but right now it's slippery. Well, let's just do some careful refining, little by little, shall we? Oh.
Something started smoking. And what lies ahead of us?
Oh, fuck.
What is...
It started to smoke.
Something short-circuited.
Controller.
Your mother. Something went wrong, gentlemen. And it's scary, so basically that converter from 96 to 12 volts burned out, and because of that the power supply for everything burned out, or did the gearbox just break down on us? Terrible. Fuck. But I think it just shorted out from the shaking, so you guys wouldn't get scared.
What?
No, it's probably not water. Well, I was scared. So, are we gonna make it? Well, nothing's gonna happen, right? Gentlemen, let's sum things up. We can't test a proper car on a proper surface, but I feel like the acceleration won't be crazy. Here, it just spins its wheels everywhere. We'll see how it goes in the spring. That smoke over there is nothing, it's just the 12-volt converter. We'll replace it, everything will be fine. Overall, I liked it. Nothing seems to have fallen apart, but I think with some serious drifting, it might bend the spokes. But time will tell. All the best. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like. See you soon. I'm going to go get some sleep. Be careful. Damn it! Close it. Goodbye for now. See you soon.
Getting old is not
Fun. Vanya, where did this snow come from? Where did the snow come from? We just started. We haven't even done anything yet. It just materialized on its own. Editing magic, damn it.
They're hugging. What a sweet couple. I know, let's speak Russian. Let's add some color. The boost is on.
Kostya, get it ready.
Kostya, get it ready, say it.
Damn, how do you do it right?
The tool! Damn, it dripped all over like from a pig.
All right.
This is a mess. 4 liters plus more.
A little prop. Not sure how much paint or stuff we took from my daughter, but it turned out okay.
Looks nice. At first, I quietly opened it, but I didn't understand what it was.
It's a Drusalka, Slavito.